The ballroom glittered with chandeliers, champagne glasses clinking in the hands of men in tailored suits and women in silk gowns. On the surface, it was a night of elegance, another gathering of the wealthy Hamilton family, heirs to one of the largest manufacturing empires in the country. But beneath the gold and glass, tension was thick. All eyes had shifted to the young man at the center of the room, Daniel Hamilton, the family's only son. His hand was firmly clasped around the fingers of the woman standing beside him, her caramel skin glowing beneath the lights, her eyes steady and proud despite the whispers slithering across the room. Her. Daniel's aunt hissed under her breath, her jeweled necklace rattling with indignation. Out of all the women he could bring, he brings her? The words cut through the air like shards of ice. Some guests muffled laughter behind napkins, others stared openly, their gazes dripping with the same question: what was a Hamilton boy doing with a black woman? But Daniel didn't flinch. His grip only tightened. He looked down at her, Amara, the woman who had stolen his heart in the simplest of ways, not with wealth, not with status, but with her laugh, her brilliance, and her unshakable confidence. His mother, Caroline Hamilton, rose from her chair, her diamond ring catching the chandelier's light. "Daniel," she said, voice polished with that cutting refinement only old money could carry. "I hope this is temporary." A murmur of agreement rippled across the room. Daniel's father leaned back in his chair, silent but with a smirk that said everything. "My son is a fool." Daniel opened his mouth to speak, but Amara beat him to it. Her voice was calm, but it carried through the room with an unexpected authority. "No," she said. "This isn't temporary. I'm here because he loves me, and because I love him." The room fell into silence. Somewhere, a glass cracked against a table. Laughter broke out again, sharper this time, openly mocking. But Amara's chin lifted higher. What none of them knew, what none of them could know, was that she was more powerful, more untouchable, more wealthy than everyone in that room combined. And tonight was only the beginning of their lesson. If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now back to the story. Daniel Hamilton had grown up in a world of polished floors, silent butlers, and silver spoons so heavy they bent under the weight of expectation. From the moment he was born, his life had been scripted: prep school, Ivy League, and eventually the throne of the Hamilton Empire, a multi-billion-dollar manufacturing dynasty that traced its lineage back to old American wealth. His parents, Richard and Caroline, had always been clear about one thing: family image mattered more than anything else. Love wasn't about passion or soulmates, it was about strategy. A Hamilton marriage was an alliance, not a romance. So when Daniel brought Amara into his life, the Hamilton estate shook with disapproval. Amara was everything they considered unacceptable. She wasn't from their world of old money, she wasn't white, and in their eyes, she was far beneath their name. What they didn't know was that Amara's life was a story none of them could comprehend. Born to Nigerian parents who immigrated to the U.S. with nothing but hope and discipline, Amara had witnessed struggle firsthand. Her father drove taxis, her mother worked 3 jobs, often coming home with aching feet but a smile that said, "We'll make it through." Amara had inherited that fire. By the age of 25, she had already founded a tech company that revolutionized medical data storage. Her sharp mind and relentless drive had turned her startup into a global powerhouse. By 30, she wasn't just successful, she was a billionaire, courted by governments and corporations alike. But she kept her wealth private. To her, money was not a trophy to flash. It was a tool, one she wielded carefully, away from the eyes of those who would only see her as a dollar sign. Daniel didn't fall in love with her bank account. He fell in love with her spirit. The way she laughed in the rain, the way she stayed up until sunrise talking about books, the way she challenged him to break free of his family's golden chains. Still, Daniel carried the scars of growing up in a world where love was currency. A world where he was taught that his worth depended on who stood beside him. So when his family mocked him, when they sneered at Amara with their thinly veiled racism and elitism, a small part of him feared they might break him. But Amara, strong, steady, unshakable, reminded him daily, "Their money doesn't define you. And mine doesn't define me. Love does." Yet the Hamilton family's disdain was not going to fade quietly. Their arrogance was a storm, and it was brewing. Daniel had chosen love over legacy. And the Hamiltons? They were preparing to remind him what it meant to betray his bloodline. Do you think Daniel made the right choice by standing by Amara despite his family's judgment? What would you do if your family mocked the person you love? Drop your thoughts below. It was supposed to be an ordinary Sunday dinner at the Hamilton estate. Ordinary in the Hamilton world meant extravagance. A 10-foot dining table dressed with gold-rimmed plates, chandeliers flickering above, servants weaving through with wine bottles older than Daniel. Daniel had already prepared himself. Every dinner was the same: small talk wrapped in judgment, gossip laced with venom, and the unspoken expectation that he would eventually bend to their will. But this evening was different. Amara had agreed to join him again. She knew the hostility she faced each time, the glares, the condescension, the subtle digs about her background, her skin, her place. Yet she walked in gracefully, her head high, her presence commanding the room without her even trying. Halfway through dinner, Caroline Hamilton set down her fork with a deliberate clink. Her eyes, cold and calculating, fixed on Amara. "Daniel," she said smoothly, "we've been patient with your experiment. But enough is enough. You cannot possibly think this," she gestured toward Amara with a dismissive wave, "is the future of our family name." The room stiffened. Aunts exchanged smirks. Cousins leaned forward, eager for the drama. Daniel's jaw clenched. "Mother." "No, Daniel," Caroline cut him off. "It's time to grow up. Our family's reputation has stood for generations. You will not tarnish it with this choice." Amara's fork stilled on her plate. Her heart thudded, but her face betrayed nothing. Richard Hamilton leaned back, his voice carrying the weight of finality. "Son, you'll have to make a decision. Stay with her, and you walk away from everything. The inheritance, the company, the name. It will all be gone." The words crashed down like thunder. Daniel froze, the air around him tightening. This was the moment they had hinted at for months, but now it was laid bare, a brutal ultimatum. For a moment, silence reigned. Guests shifted uncomfortably, their curiosity at war with their manners. And then Amara spoke. Her voice was steady low, but it cut through the room like steel. "I don't need your approval. And Daniel doesn't need your money. He has something far greater than that, a choice. A choice to love freely, or to live chained by your arrogance." Gasps echoed down the table. Caroline's face went pale, then red, fury flashing in her eyes. But before she could reply, one of the cousins chuckled. "Love? Please. Let's be real. Without our wealth, he's nothing. And without us, so are you." The words were cruel, but they triggered something no one expected. Amara leaned back, her gaze sharp, a hint of a smile tugging at her lips. It wasn't arrogance. It was the smile of someone who knew a truth so enormous, so world-shaking, that it could silence an entire dynasty in an instant. She didn't reveal it then. Not yet. But in her silence, in that single smile, a storm was promised. The Hamilton family thought they held all the power. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. If you were in Daniel's shoes, love on one side, family legacy on the other, which would you choose? Comment below. I really want to know your take on this dilemma. The dinner ended in chaos. Caroline's sharp voice echoed down the long corridors as Daniel and Amara left the estate, her words dripping like poison. "You'll regret this, Daniel. She will ruin you." But Amara walked beside him in silence, her steps calm, unhurried. She didn't need to respond. People like Caroline thrived on fear, and Amara had none to give. Still, the Hamilton family wasn't done. They never were. By the following week, whispers spread across the Hamilton circle. Old friends called Richard with concerns. Socialites hinted at scandal. Caroline, furious, hired a private investigator. If Amara was going to stand at their table, they would drag every secret out of her. The first report came back quickly, and it stunned them. Amara Johnson, 31 years old. Born to Nigerian immigrants. Ivy League graduate with top honors in computer science. Founder and CEO of Arion Technologies, a company quietly revolutionizing global health infrastructure. Arion. Richard scoffed, scanning the papers. Never heard of it. But his assistant's face was pale. "Sir, governments use it. Hospitals rely on it. Arion's contracts are worth billions." Richard's hand froze on the page. Billions. Caroline snatched the report, her eyes darting over the lines. She tried to laugh it off. Numbers mean nothing. She's still, her voice faltered. There must be something wrong with this. They dug deeper. Another report arrived. Then another. Each one painted the same picture. Amara wasn't just successful, she was untouchable. Her net worth was higher than the entire Hamilton empire combined. The irony was brutal. All this time, they had mocked her for not belonging. Yet the truth was, they didn't belong in her world. At the next family gathering, the whispers turned into uneasy stares. Caroline tried to regain control, laughing too loudly, dismissing the reports as overstated nonsense. But her voice cracked at the edges. Meanwhile, Daniel watched quietly, his heart swelling with pride. He hadn't fallen in love with Amara's fortune, but now that it stood in the open, he felt a fire of vindication burning inside him. And Amara? She said nothing. She didn't boast, didn't correct, didn't flaunt. She let their disbelief fester. Because she knew something the Hamiltons didn't. The real revelation hadn't even arrived yet. The Hamilton estate buzzed with its usual arrogance during their annual charity gala, a night when the family paraded their wealth under the guise of generosity. Celebrities, politicians, and business moguls filled the ballroom, sipping champagne and waiting for the Hamiltons to announce their yearly grand donation. Daniel dreaded these nights. He usually endured them with a fake smile, but tonight felt different. Tonight, he wasn't alone. Amara walked by his side in an emerald silk gown that shimmered under the chandeliers. Heads turned not just at her beauty, but at the way she carried herself, calm, regal, unshaken by the icy stares. Caroline had already warned her son, if she dares embarrass us tonight, it will be her last time in this house. But what Caroline didn't know was that this was about to become her last time controlling the narrative. The evening dragged on until Caroline finally took the stage, her voice echoing with its usual false warmth. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight as we celebrate not just the Hamilton legacy, but our continued dedication to helping those in need. The applause was polite, rehearsed. She lifted a crystal glass, pausing dramatically. Tonight, we pledge $10 million toward children's education. The crowd clapped. Flashbulbs sparked. The Hamilton name gleamed again, until a voice rang out from the audience. 10 million. The words sliced through the room like lightning. Heads turned. It was Amara. She stood tall, her eyes locked on Caroline. Children's education deserves more than pocket change. The crowd gasped. Whispers ignited instantly. Caroline's face stiffened into a smile, though her hand gripped the podium like a vice. I'm sorry, Miss Johnson, but... Amara stepped forward. Her voice was smooth, commanding, impossible to ignore. Arion Technologies will personally pledge $100 million to this cause. Effective immediately. The ballroom erupted. Gasps. Applause. Murmurs of disbelief. Caroline's smile shattered. Richard's jaw dropped. The Hamilton cousins gawked at one another. And then came the blow none of them expected. Amara walked up to the stage, her presence silencing the noise. She turned to the crowd, not the Hamiltons. Some of you may not know me. I'm Amara Johnson, founder and CEO of Arion Technologies. My company's mission has always been about creating lasting impact, not preserving old legacies. Tonight, I'm not here as Daniel's date. I'm here as a partner in building a future where children rise beyond the limits that society places on them. The room erupted in cheers. Cameras flashed wildly. The audience rose to their feet. But the Hamilton family sat frozen. Caroline's diamond hand trembled. Richard's lips pressed into a thin line. In one moment, the balance of power had shifted. The Hamilton name no longer commanded the room. Amara did. Daniel's heart pounded with pride, awe, and love. He turned to see his mother's pale face, her eyes darting, her empire crumbling around her without a word spoken directly to her. And in that moment, Caroline realized the truth she had been too blind to see. The woman she mocked for her skin, her background, her place in the world, was greater than all of them combined. The gala had ended in fireworks, not the celebratory kind, but the kind that leaves smoke and ashes behind. For the first time in Hamilton history, the family name had been overshadowed. Reporters didn't write about Caroline's donation. They didn't care about Richard's empire. Every headline read the same. Amara Johnson steals spotlight at Hamilton Gala with $100 million pledge. Who is Daniel Hamilton's billionaire girlfriend? Move over Hamilton's. Meet the real power in the room. Caroline's fury was volcanic. For days, she refused to leave her study, phone glued to her ear, calling board members, allies, old family friends. The whispers were unbearable. The Hamiltons were no longer the family of the season. They were the family who got upstaged. But humiliation wasn't enough for Caroline. She wanted revenge. Within a week, articles began circulating. Anonymous sources accused Amara of corruption, of exploiting workers, of laundering money through shell companies overseas. None of it was true, but the media didn't care. The Hamiltons had connections, and they used every single one. Daniel confronted his mother. "You did this, didn't you?" Caroline didn't flinch. "You think love makes you wise, Daniel. But love makes you blind. That woman is tearing this family apart. I won't stand by and watch. She's done nothing but show strength and grace," he shouted. Caroline's voice hardened. "She's not one of us. She never will be. And if you insist on dragging her into our world, then prepare to watch her be destroyed by it." For Amara, the attacks cut deep. Her inbox overflowed with hateful messages. Investors grew nervous. Government contracts hesitated. Years of building trust with quiet dignity were suddenly threatened by lies whispered from gilded lips. Late one night, she sat by the window of her apartment, city lights flickering below. Daniel entered, his face heavy with worry. "They won't stop," Amara said softly, her voice breaking for the first time. "Your family, they'll burn everything to the ground just to win." Daniel knelt beside her, taking her hand. "Then let them. I don't care about their empire. I care about you." But Amara shook her head, tears glistening. "They're not just after me, Daniel. They're after us. And I don't want to watch you lose everything because of me." For the first time since they met, Daniel saw doubt in her eyes. The woman who had stood so tall, so unbreakable, was crumbling under the weight of hate and betrayal. And for Daniel, it felt like a knife to the chest. He had chosen her over his family, but now he feared he might lose her anyway. As the night stretched on, silence filled the room. Daniel thought of the ultimatum at dinner. He thought of his mother's words. He thought of the empire he never wanted, and the woman he couldn't live without. But as dawn crept across the skyline, one terrifying thought gripped him. What if love wasn't enough to survive this war? The morning after their darkest night, Daniel woke to the sound of silence. The kind of silence that feels heavy, like the world itself is holding its breath. He found Amara already awake, sitting at her desk with papers spread around her, a determined fire back in her eyes. "What are you doing?" he asked softly, still groggy. Amara looked up, her expression steady. "What I should have done from the start. Fighting them on their terms only gives them power. It's time we fight on mine." She tapped the papers. Contracts. Reports. Proposals. Every piece of evidence proving not only her innocence but also the scale of her empire. For years, she had hidden her wealth, preferring a quiet life. But now the mask had to come off. Daniel stepped closer, watching the gears of her brilliant mind turning. "You're going to expose everything?" Amara nodded slowly. "Not to brag. Not to gloat. But to show the world, and your family, that I will not be erased. That what I've built is too strong to be torn down by lies." For the first time in days, Daniel felt hope stir in his chest. He crouched beside her, taking her hands in his. "Amara, you don't have to prove anything. Not to them. Not to anyone." She smiled faintly. "I don't have to. But I want to. Because this isn't just about us anymore. It's about every person they've ever mocked, dismissed, or looked down on. If I stay silent, they win. If I rise for more than just myself." Daniel's heart swelled. He realized then that his love for her wasn't just about who she was to him, it was about who she was to the world. A force. A leader. A woman who turned pain into power. And in that moment, Daniel made his own breakthrough. "I've been afraid," he admitted. "Afraid of losing you. Afraid of losing everything. But the truth is, the only thing worth losing would be myself, if I didn't stand with you completely. Not halfway. Not in the shadows. But fully. Amara's eyes softened. Are you ready for what that means? Daniel's jaw tightened. More than ever. If they want a war, then they'll see what love looks like when it refuses to break. The two of them held each other in the golden morning light, no longer weighed down by fear. It wasn't just Daniel's fight anymore. It wasn't just Amara's. It was theirs. And together, they were unstoppable. The Hamilton boardroom was a cathedral of power, high ceilings, polished mahogany, portraits of ancestors staring down like watchful ghosts. It was where fortunes were secured, where alliances were made, where betrayal was dressed in velvet. Caroline sat at the head of the long table, Richard beside her, the board members lined along either side. Their faces were grim, weary, but loyal. Today was supposed to be the Hamiltons' moment to reclaim control. A meeting to announce Daniel's removal from succession for his disobedience, and to quietly sever ties with Amara once and for all. But Daniel and Amara had arrived uninvited. And this time, they weren't walking in quietly. Amara strode into the room in a tailored black suit, her presence commanding without a word. Daniel followed, his shoulders squared, no longer the timid son cowering under his family's shadow. Caroline's lips curved into a cold smile. You weren't invited. Amara met her gaze without flinching. I don't need an invitation. What I have is the truth. She placed a thick folder on the table. Inside, contracts, data, partnerships, proof of her company's reach across the globe. Evidence that her empire dwarfed the Hamilton fortune 10 times over. Richard scoffed. Do you think numbers impress us? Wealth isn't legacy. Legacy is blood. Amara's eyes narrowed. Legacy isn't what you leave in bank accounts. It's what you leave in people's lives. And your so-called legacy is nothing but a prison you built for yourselves. Caroline's voice cut through, venomous. You don't belong here. You never will. Money or not, you're not one of us. Daniel slammed his fist against the table, his voice ringing with a strength no one had ever heard from him before. Enough. The board froze. Even Caroline blinked, startled. For years, I let you control me, Daniel said, his voice shaking with passion. You told me who to be, who to love, who to become. But this ends today. I won't inherit your cruelty. I won't carry your chains. If being a Hamilton means choosing hatred over love, then I want no part of it. Silence filled the room. Then Amara stepped forward, her gaze sweeping across the board members. You think Daniel needs your fortune? He doesn't. He has me. And together, we don't need your approval, your inheritance, or your empire. Because the truth is, she leaned closer, her voice calm but razor-sharp, I could buy and sell the Hamilton Empire tomorrow if I wanted to. The words landed like a thunderclap. Board members exchanged uneasy glances. One coughed nervously. Another shifted in his chair. For the first time in Hamilton history, the family name trembled. Caroline's face twisted, fury and disbelief warring in her eyes. You dare. Yes, Amara cut in. I dare. Because I am no longer hiding who I am. And Daniel is no longer hiding who he loves. Daniel took Amara's hand in front of everyone, his voice steady. This is my family now. Her. Us. Our love. That's the only legacy I care about. The board erupted in whispers. Some looked impressed, others fearful. But the truth was undeniable. The Hamilton dynasty had been broken, not by scandal, but by love refusing to bow. Caroline's hand trembled against the polished wood. For the first time in her life, she realized her wealth couldn't protect her from one thing, irrelevance. And in that moment, she knew she had lost. The silence in the Hamilton boardroom lingered long after Daniel's words. For once, Caroline had no sharp reply, no icy dismissal. She simply sat there, frozen, realizing the truth. Her power had slipped through her fingers. The board, sensing the shift, turned not to Caroline or Richard but to Amara and Daniel. A few nodded in quiet respect. Others looked away, ashamed. But one thing was clear, the Hamilton dynasty had fractured. Daniel and Amara didn't stay to watch the collapse. They walked out hand in hand, sunlight spilling through the tall windows as if the world itself was affirming their choice. Weeks passed. The smear campaigns against Amara crumbled under the weight of truth. Her company, Arion Technologies, released reports proving transparency, worker care, and global impact. Far from destroying her, the attacks had only drawn more attention to her work. Investors flocked. Governments renewed contracts. The empire she built only grew stronger. Meanwhile, the Hamiltons spiraled. With board confidence shaken, Richard lost his grip on the company. Caroline's reputation among high society circles withered. The family name, once synonymous with power, became a cautionary tale. Don't mistake arrogance for invincibility. And Daniel? For the first time in his life, he was free. He and Amara traveled, not to flaunt wealth, but to breathe. To see the world without judgmental eyes watching. They walked along beaches at dawn, hiked quiet trails, and laughed in hidden cafes where no one cared about last names. One evening, overlooking the sea, Daniel turned to Amara. Do you ever regret it? Standing up to them? To all of it? Amara smiled, her eyes softening. Regret? No. Every battle we fought only proved one thing, that love is stronger than fear. And we didn't just win for ourselves. We won for everyone who's ever been told they don't belong. Daniel pulled her close, his voice low but certain. Then this is the legacy I choose. They kissed as the waves crashed below, the sound of the ocean carrying their laughter into the night. Months later, at a charity event hosted not by the Hamiltons but by Amara and Daniel, the ballroom was alive with warmth, not pretense. Children who benefited from their foundation ran across the stage, their joy brighter than any chandelier. The world saw not a billionaire flaunting power, nor a man chained by family expectations, but two people who had chosen love over legacy, truth over lies, and each other over everything else. Caroline, watching from the back of the room, felt something she had never known before: shame. For the first time in her life, she understood that wealth without love, power without compassion, was nothing. She turned away quietly, tears stinging her eyes. But for Daniel and Amara, there were no more battles to fight. The war was over. And love had won. If you were Daniel, torn between family pressure and the love of your life, would you have made the same choice? Or would fear have kept you in the cage? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your story matters here. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.